welcome to video 2 of a different approach to chromatic harmony in key. The reason I'm doing this too is because I want to do an advanced chromatic modulation series. I have a basic chromatic modulation series on my channel, which I will link, and also you really have to know chromatic harmony, basic chromatic harmony in key. Don't bother with that if you don't know how to use this secondary dominant, for instance. Don't bother with this episode. I'm just being honest there. And here's a link to a course that I have. I have to plug this in because, you know, musicians do have to make money. And this course does have literally like 150 examples of royalty-free secondary functioning chord progressions in key that you can use. So it's well worth it in my honest opinion, which is way more examples than you'll ever get buying a theory book. So first we're going to do a history lesson here. Where does this half diminished to a dominant chord come from? Let me play this passage. People automatically assume this is jazz if I just play this passage. But no, this is actually a passage written in 1830, just a few years after Beethoven, by Chopin. Highly chromatic. There's this assumption that if you've any kind of seventh chords and chromatic movement, you're automatically playing jazz. I think it has to do with the times we live in, but he does this many times in this passage, including stuff like planing as well. So we can't just assume something is invented by a specific style. I skipped all the planing parts and just playing the half diminished part to dominant. So these really daring passages start occurring way earlier than we think. So let's move on to the concept. If you go to a secondary dominant 5 of 3, I'm not going to explain how to do this. You need to know how to do this. You could use a precursor half diminished, which follows in the natural order, resolving a fifth below to a dominant chord. Precursor resolves again naturally a fifth below to a dominant chord. Precursor resolves naturally to the dominant chord in C. So you'll start finding sequences like this in the 1800s all the time, as well as a modern move. So here's a sequence you can do that involves inversions of that half diminished, resolved, moving on to a E minor 7th, E half diminished, resolved, A dominant 7th, D minor 7th, half diminished, resolved. So you have precursors to all these secondary dominants. So you could use it to end a phrase. Giving you that highly chromatic top line. Practice these kind of sequences in different inversions because they'll yield different results like this. Do it nice and slow until you have it memorized. You don't have to do a C major 7th, you could do a C, it doesn't matter. Again, you could use something like an ending of a piece or phrase. Again, running through different inversions, maybe start on the 5th on C and maybe do some suspensions. The whole point is just trying to learn how to use these things creatively instead of just running through chords. And you get these kind of highly chromatic melodic lines doing stuff like that. So I created one more sequence just to show this concept in action, using again a half diminished, resolving right here. But instead using an augmented 5, flat 7. And I cover that in my chromatic harmony course, by the way, because it does want to resolve to the C. So musically, you could start as an opening phrase, I don't know, or might do something like that instead, replacing the D minor 9 with a D dominant flat 9. Which I do cover, interestingly, in my chromatic harmony course, basic chromatic harmony. That would be part of a dominant chain. So taking the original sequence, have fun with it. Try to come up with different stylistic sounds using the same chord sequence. Because you're going to find, especially if you're a history buff like me and all kinds of musical style buffs, you're going to find that there's a lot more similarities than there are differences between styles. Like that Chopin piece there, highly chromatic. If I just play that for like a friend or something, they automatically will say that's jazz, and I've had that happen before. If I just play that highly chromatic part.